The truth is that it is real. It's there. Their vibration, their energy is all around us, and we can use the signs as validation to prove that, and also get that little bit of connection that we're seeking to feel close to them. And so what I always tell people is ask for your sign and then completely release control about how it's supposed to show up, and just walk through life with an open heart, being open to receiving it however the way it's supposed to happen.
This is the Life with Grief podcast, the podcast that talks about and normalizes the complexities of grief, life after loss, and all this entails, and so much more. I want you to think of this podcast as a safe space where I'm a friendly face and we're just journeying through this together to figure out how to live life with our grief in tow. I'm your host, TN.After. I'm a grief and transformational life coach, and I'm here to serve you guidance, support, tangible coping tools, inspiration, and some laughs along the way to help you cultivate a more meaningful, intentional, and beautiful life. But grieving or not, we're getting into countless topics here on the podcast, from coping with loss to self-development and so much more. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive right in. Hey guys, welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, TN.After. Please join me in welcoming this extremely special guest today. We are chatting with Alyse Dusseault. She is a widow, a grief coach, psychic medium, and Reiki and energy work practitioner based in Nashville, Tennessee. And after the loss of her fiancé Jared in June of 2020, she began connecting with him in spirit, and this opened her up to her intuitive gifts, which ultimately allowed her to create sort of this new language with him in spirit. And Alyse opened her business, Alyse, in January 2022, where she helps others in their healing journey through Reiki, mediumship, intuitive readings, and grief coaching. She is also the host of the Grief Awakening podcast, which I have had the pleasure of being a guest on back in 2023. That is episode 30 on her podcast. I have linked that in the show description in case you want to check that out and give that a listen as well. But Alyse and I have a super powerful and beautiful conversation here about the loss of a partner and everything that entails, but also her mediumship journey, also signs and symbols from our loved ones and how we can connect with our loved ones when they die, and also the power of energy healing and Reiki healing. By the way, on a more personal note, I actually recently had a little mini intuitive reading with her, and she seriously hit on so many things that were so on point. It was so impactful for me. I can't even tell you. I just absolutely love chatting with her and getting to witness her gift. So please just sit back and enjoy this conversation. Definitely go check her out. All of the ways that you can connect with her are also linked in the show notes. And this is just such a unique conversation that we really haven't had on the podcast here yet. So I am just so excited to share it with you guys. So without further ado, let's get it started. Alyse, welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. I feel like this is very long overdue.
It is long time coming for us, for sure.
It really is. And I had the pleasure of being on your podcast. And we were just talking about this, trying to figure out when this was, but it was a wonderful experience. I was very new to podcasting at that time. So I don't know. I just feel this kinship with you, and I'm so excited. And I really, the things that I want to like get into with you today are really not things that we have like approached on this podcast yet. So I'm just super excited. And you have one of the most heartbreaking and touching stories I have heard, as we all do, but like truly. And I remember actually listening to episode 1 and 2 of your podcast back in the day. And I literally was like on a walk and I was like, how does one process like everything you've been through? So I do want to get to that. But I do also love to kind of start the episode with just like getting to know you a little bit. So any just like fun facts and, you know, just to allow everyone to kind of get to know the essence of you before we dive into the griefy bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me on. I was just thinking too, as you were talking, I think you and I like started our podcast around the same time. So we were both like pretty new to podcasting when we first got together. So I just love to see like where you have grown through this whole, this whole last 2 years or so, right? Same for me. It's crazy. Um, so for those that don't know me, my name is Alyse. I am out of Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a grief coach, a Reiki practitioner, a psychic medium. Like, let me think. What are all my titles?
Jackie of all trades.
Yeah, exactly. So I primarily work in the energy work space. So for people who are not familiar with the term energy work, I feel like it's kind of a new thing that people are talking about, but it's really just different modalities of healing work available to us. I specifically love to work with people who are grieving because that's my background. Um, yeah, fun facts. Let me think. I'm an aunt to like a million nieces and nephews. That's my favorite job in the world. And yeah, I've been in Nashville for the last 14, 15 years and I love it here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. Nashville is still on my list. We were like gonna go there for a bachelorette party or two and it never worked out, but I'm like, dang it, I need to get
Yeah.
down
It's
there.
yeah,
It's
it's
so
so
fun.
popular for bachelorette parties for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
But yeah. Amazing. So, like I said, your story just really hit home for me, and I have no doubt there are aspects of it that listeners here will absolutely resonate with, even if they haven't been through the same exact loss as you. That's like the thing about what I just want to like get across in this podcast is like, even if we have lost the same people on paper, or even if our losses feel similar, or even if they're completely different, I feel like there's so many just principles and like essences of grief and loss that we can all collectively experience, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because that means we can just better support and be there for each other and just understand each other on just this cellular level that, people who are fortunate enough to not having
I know.
gone through something super devastating, can't quite grasp the way that we can. So however much you're comfortable sharing, share whatever you'd like about your story of loss, and then just your journey of grief up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so my journey really kick-started back in 2015, which is when I met my partner and fiance, Jared. We met on a dating app back when Tinder was like a new thing. So like dating apps were really lame back then. Like they weren't like now everyone's on a dating app.
Yeah.
Back then, like I was embarrassed to say I was on a dating app. But we hit it off pretty well. And over the next 5 or so years, we just started building a life together. We got engaged in 2018. He is such an amazing um, soul person. And he just had this beautiful way about him that just, when you were around him, he made everyone feel so special. Like you were the most special person in the room if he was speaking to you. Um, and he still makes me feel that way through all these different other ways that we connect, which we'll talk about later. But he's just such a beautiful soul. And in June of 2020, he unfortunately was killed by a drunk driver on the interstate. And that's really like where obviously my grief journey began. Before that, I've had experienced some loss, like so many of us. Like I lost a grandparent or two. Like I had experienced loss before, but never deep grief
Mhm.
like this.
Mhm.
I think that's what's so different about sudden loss or loss of someone at a younger age versus like losing a grandparent who's typically lived like a full
Yeah.
life,
Like,
you
not that
know?
it's not difficult in its own way, but it's like,
Yeah.
I hate to word it this way, but it's more expected, right? Like, we
Hmm.
all know that we will probably lose our parents and grandparents. Like, it'll never not be easy, but like, just the natural order of things, right? Like,
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like we're all expected to
right.
die
Yeah.
at some
Somehow we're
point,
all,
but somehow like losing someone kind of young
yeah.
feels
Yeah.
so unexpected. We're still
Yeah.
like in shock,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Um, so that was kind of our story. And I didn't know grief before this.
Yeah.
I really didn't. Like, I don't feel like I fully grieved my grandparents.
Totally.
Um, it's just a different experience. So this was so new and it flipped my world around, of course. We were engaged, living together, about to be married. We were supposed to be married in October of that year. And of course, we were all going through a pandemic all at the same time. It was a lot at once. And it was really hard. Of course, like you get through those feelings first of shock and trying to make sense of everything that happened. Unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, but unfortunately, I wasn't in the car with him, of course. Like we were in separate places. If I had been in the car with him, I would not be sitting here with you today. That's how horrible this accident was. And the other driver also lost her life. So it was very hard to like make sense of everything that happened. There was no one there to give an explanation or to blame or to give the details, you know? So I had to move through that layer of like making sense of something that just didn't make sense at all, which
That's a good way to word
death never does.
Sure.
And then it was really like letting that settle in that my life was now going to be completely different. Very quickly after I had to move because I couldn't, you know, at the time afford to live in the home that we were sharing together anymore, like going from 2 incomes down to 1 and making all those changes as we do when you lose a partner. It was a really hard time. There was a good like 6 months there where I would say that I was in like very deep grief. And all I wanted more than anything was to find some kind of connection with him. I wanted to feel close to him again. It felt like his memory, his presence was like slipping away as every day passed, you know?
Yeah.
Which time just does that. And oftentimes like people around you don't want to talk about the loss because they're like afraid to make you uncomfortable or they're uncomfortable talking about grief and death. And so it feels like this big elephant in the room all the time. And I felt so disconnected from a lot of people around me, but also starting to feel disconnected from him. And that's what I was like desperately seeking. And so I began just doing what felt naturally right, which was to talk to him and talk out loud to him. And this just became something I did almost like in a therapeutic way. I would sit in the car on my long drives home from like visiting people because I would travel a lot because I just never wanted to be home. And I would just talk to him in the car and I would kind of like hear what he would say, you know, as a response back. And I'm like, oh, I mean, that's what he would say if he was here, but he's not, you know, he's not saying that to me. Like he's, you know, he's gone. Right. And eventually I started receiving like other forms of communication and connection from him in the form of signs and like actually hearing his voice audibly in my ear. I don't know if you've ever had that happen before, but
oh my God.
I remember there was one morning I woke up and this was very early on. I want to say it had been like 2 months after he passed. And I was, you know, when you're in that state of like almost awake, but like you're kind of like waking up.
Yep.
That mind space is like the perfect space for spirit to connect with us because we're like halfway in our subconscious and halfway in our conscious. And I heard so audibly in my ear his voice saying, "Hey," like he just like it just said, "Hey," like almost like he was like calling me from the other room, you know. And I remember like sitting up out of bed like super fast and be like looking around like, "Where are you?" Yeah. And so little things just started happening like that. And I know that we've talked a little bit about some signs that you receive from your parents and hopefully you guys have had some conversations here on the podcast about that, but if not, we can dive deeper into it. But I started using signs as a tool, as a form to connect with him as well.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do I start with this? Okay, actually, okay. I wanted to ask you about like kind of signs and symbols a little bit later, but this is a perfect segue. So let's do this now because, and I saw something you posted like very recently, I think like in the last like day or two about signs and symbols specifically. And I wanted to ask you too, and it sounds like you were gonna say something about this maybe in like a part 2, but like how we can all tap into that because I remember especially like earlier on in my grief, I did get like a couple, I would say, visits from my parents. Like they would sometimes be in my dreams in very strange ways, and it was very much a dream. It wasn't like I could feel them necessarily,
But there were times, and this was like kind of more typically with my mom, where like it would be so vivid. And sadly, this hasn't happened in a long time, but I actually think it's because I don't know, it's just my personal opinion. I feel like she knew I needed it more than almost
Yeah.
more than I do
Yeah.
now. I don't know. Still trying to figure that out with her. But where I would like hug her and I could feel, but it was weird. Sometimes I couldn't see her face. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
still a little bit disjointed, but it was just that physical touch. And I remember there was this one time where I think it was very much in that in between phase that you kind of just mentioned, where I literally could feel her hand, like her fingerprints, her nails, like so specifically. Um, and that was really trippy. And I remember telling like a couple family members about that. And I remember one of them saying like, it was someone on my dad's side. And they were like, your dad has never visited me. I would give anything to have any sign or symbol or whatever for them. And I also kind of remember thinking like, I had to be really careful not to like want, like, this sounds so weird, but want it too badly, like trying
Mm-hmm.
to will it into existence and get too stressed out or too hung up on the fact that I wasn't experiencing it, because then I felt like I was closing myself off to it coming in naturally. So I'd
Yeah.
love for you to just like touch on whatever you want, honestly, about like kind of signs and symbols, and just have that discussion, but also like what you would maybe recommend or say to people who are maybe feeling that way. Like, I feel so hopeless. Like, I feel super disconnected from them. I'm not getting these signs and symbols. I'm trying so hard. Like, because I think there's a lot of releasing that we have to do to even allow these things to come in. And that could be very hard. So I would just want to open up the floor to you, honestly.
Yeah, you just perfectly described the experience that most grievers have when they're wanting that little bit of connection, and maybe they're getting interested in seeking out signs and symbols but don't know
Yeah.
where to start, or they're saying, I keep asking for them but I'm not receiving them,
Mhm.
or I'm not seeing them. I don't know what to look for.
Yeah. Like they're very like
There's
it's a little black and white. They're very
yeah,
like, I'm trying to look specifically for something. It's like, well, it might not come in the form that you expect it to. So
exactly.
yeah.
So you perfectly described that. So oftentimes what happens is we learn about the opportunity of signs. So the common ones that people talk about are coins in your path, seeing birds, like especially cardinals,
Yeah.
feathers on like white feathers on the ground. Yes, these are all ways that our loved ones will show up, pop in.
Mhm.
Um, but I often find that our loved ones will show up with something even more specific to us. And this is a beautiful way to actually like get validation that something that you ask for is from them. But there's kind of a trick to it. Like you said, we want to control it.
Yeah.
We'll say, okay, I want to see a bluebird. Please send me a bluebird, which this is just you can ask your loved ones for specific signs is what I
Yeah.
really want to dive into here is like, and exactly like the reel that you were mentioning that I posted earlier this week. This is what I'm
Mhm.
talking about is we can ask our loved ones for something specific in order to receive validation that when we see it, it is from them rather than maybe seeing a coin and being like, it
Could have
could be from
been.
them, but maybe that person over there just dropped it on their way out of the grocery store. Like, it's
Like, is
not
that a
for me.
coincidence or is it? Yeah.
Is it a coincidence? Is it actually a sign? So a beautiful way to alleviate that is asking for something super specific that
Mhm.
makes sense to you. And the thing about it is the trick is if I ask for a bluebird, but then I put these parameters on it where I say, I want to see a bluebird, but it has to be in my front yard. It
Mm.
has to come on Saturday. It has to be at 3 p.m. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you get so like a little too specific
Yeah.
around the way it's supposed to happen. Not the what, but the way.
Hmm.
And that's where spirit struggles. And you get so focused and dialed in on it's going to happen at this time because I asked for all the X, Y, and Z thing.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't. And you are trying to control how a spirit is going to show up and you just can't.
Right. And that can be
So,
really discouraging and make us question,
yeah.
like it's almost like I feel like sometimes people approach, and I've been guilty of this too. It's almost like, okay, prove that you're around, prove that
Yes.
this is a way for
We
you to
are
prove
looking
that you're safe.
for, yeah, we're looking for validation and proof because
Yeah.
our logical mind, our ego is telling us this is not real.
Yeah.
You're making this up. This is not real. And the truth is that it is real. It's there. Their vibration, their energy is all around us. And we can use the signs as validation to prove that. And also get that little bit of connection that we're seeking to feel close to them. And so, what I always tell people is ask for your sign and then completely release control about how it's supposed to show up and just walk through life with an open heart, being open to receiving it however the way it's supposed to happen. So, if I said, I want to see a bluebird, which I received bluebirds from my grandfather, um, I can ask for that and just know that anytime I see a bluebird, whether it shows up on somebody's t-shirt who's walking across from me at the store, if it shows up in a song on the radio at random, if I see a physical bluebird, all the different ways that a bluebird could show up on a National Geographic show I'm watching,
it might not be in the ways that you typically
it might
expect.
not be in the way that you are wanting it to show up. So we have to release control and allow spirit. I say allow spirit to play with us, because that's what they love to do, is like they want to have fun and they want to surprise us. So, oh my gosh, I have so many stories around the way that Jared specifically has surprised me and shown me crazy signs. But that is my number one piece of advice, is just trying to release control of how it's supposed to show up and just decide on the thing you want, or you can have multiple things that you want to see and just let it come to you. Let them play.
Just letting it be, which is so hard. It's like, I feel like that's like one of the most difficult things to do, especially when we have gone through something profoundly difficult. We're really struggling with not being able to communicate with them in like our typical ways, call, text, in person. Like I literally went to a medium, I think the week after my mom died or something, because I could not fathom not speaking with my mom ever again. And it was a profound experience, but it wasn't all positive. She like, she wasn't like ready to go. I think she was still like in the middle somewhere. I don't know that she had like fully crossed over or whatever. So it was just, it was like helpful in a way, but we kind of have to, just let them sort of do it how they can. There's like such a bridging of the gap that has to happen. And I think that could be very hard for us, because sometimes we are in a very black and white world. It's very hard for like you said, our logical mind, our ego, to like wrap our head around the fact that there's more, you know what I mean? Like they're just in this different, I guess, plane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like how would you describe that? Because I definitely wanted to like touch on your intuitive guidance. And I definitely want to talk about like how our intuition can play a role just like in our life, but also like in our grief. But just as far as like how you have become to be a medium, which I'm actually the medium that I go to also had this happen. She went through, she didn't lose somebody. She herself was actually in a very like severe car accident. And it was like, after that, she started being able to like see and feel and all of the things. So it sounds like your journey was like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, almost sort of like a little gradual, but like, how have you come to develop that? And just what does that look like for you in like the work that you provide people? Because there's definitely people that are skeptical out there. I'm not one of them. I totally believe in what you do. My husband is one of them. He's just like, whenever I see my meeting, he's like, I mean, whatever helps you sleep at night. I'm like, okay, well, it does help me sleep at night. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But just like walk me through a little bit of that process.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. So, and I love skeptics too. Like I love them, and I have so much love for them, and they'll come to it in their own timing, is what I always say. But
totally.
So from the point that I started connecting with Jared, that just became more and more prominent and was what I was using as a tool really to like just help me move through the day-to-day of grief. It really was like helping bring like little moments of joy back into my life. Every time I received a sign, every time I got to sit and talk to him and heard a response in my ear. All those little moments and the ways I was deciding to connect with him, even just journaling to him, like that is something such a simple way you can connect to your loved one, is just writing them a letter, all those little moments added up began to open myself up to just like having more of an openness and a curiosity around intuition, spirituality, what is around us, where do we go after we pass? Like I had all of these, as we all do, we have all of these questions when we experience major loss. And I just began to explore that. So I started reading a lot of books. I started watching a lot of different YouTube videos on the topic and trying to figure out, okay, I know I can connect to him, but where is he? Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Where are our loved ones? And
It's so hard to comprehend.
I started just taking in all this knowledge. And over time, my intuition began to grow and my connection to him began to grow so strongly that I would then started to open myself up to connecting with other spirits. So even just my other loved ones who had passed, 10, 15 years ago, I was able to have this connection with them now, which I had not had before. And then gradually, like I said, it was a very gradual process. It was like very soft. It wasn't this like, oh my gosh, one day I woke up and there was a ghost in my room. Like, I believe that happens for people, but that wasn't my journey. Like, I know there are people who are just born with this from a very young age, and that wasn't me. This is so gradual and soft. And I feel like Jared really had a hand in that, in making it happen in a way that wasn't scary.
Like overwhelming for you, probably.
Yeah, it was so soft and gentle.
Yeah.
My first mediumship experience was actually with the woman who gave me my first medium reading. So just like you, I had a medium reading very shortly after he passed. I want to say it was like 6 or 7 months after. And it was an amazing experience. I think I had waited just enough time where I could like sit through it and not break down crying.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a mess in mine.
Yeah, but still feel super, super connected, right?
Yes.
And for those listening who maybe haven't had one yet or are thinking about having one, you can do it at any time. You can do it, like you said, like a week after they pass, or you can wait 10 years. It doesn't matter. Their vibration is always there to connect to. It's really just when you feel ready. And so I had that reading with her. It was amazing. A few months later, as I said, I was learning and reading a lot of books and just continuing to connect with him. And I went to this sound bath here in Nashville. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but it's an amazing experience. It's essentially just like you lay in a room on yoga mats and everyone's meditating and they play like beautiful music through sound bowls. Okay.
Relaxing.
So I'm laying on the mat and I see across the room the woman who had gave me my medium reading. Her name's Kim Salter. And we were both there at the same sound bath. And during the sound bath, I had my eyes closed. I was in meditation. I was talking to Jared, but then I also felt this other like presence come close to me. And it's so hard to describe. Seeing and feeling energy feels so much like the way, like if you were driving in a car and you're at a stoplight and you can feel that someone in a car next to you is like looking over at you.
Yes. Yeah.
Like this feeling of eyes on you. That's so much what spirit feels like.
Okay.
It's like you can feel that there's something there, but you can't see it. So I had that feeling, and it didn't feel like Jared because I had connected with Jared so many times now. I knew what his energy felt like. It feels just like his personality, right? Here in the physical world. That's really what our energy feels like, just like our personality. And I felt this mother energy come close to me. And she began telling me a couple things about herself, like that she was a school teacher and she died from cancer, brain cancer, and just all these different details. And then she told me that what her name was. And I just something told me that she belonged to the medium, Kim, who was on the other side of the room. Yeah. So that was the first time. And I had to get up the confidence at the end of it to go over there and talk to her and ask her, because I needed to know that I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it was, a good like 1.5 to 2 years after that until I finally was able to like call myself a medium.
Yeah. And feel like doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so it's been a long journey, but to go back to the initial question, which is like, where are they? how can we access that? Like, how are we accessing that energy essentially? Right. It's like,
Yeah.
I've actually had a spirit come through and describe it to me just this way. You know how they talk about like the veil, and the
Yes.
veil is thin. Well,
Hmm.
this one gentleman I was connecting with, he showed me like a clear shower curtain, like the shower curtain liners.
Yes, where it's like kind of hazy still, like you
Yeah.
can't see like the details or whatever,
He
but
showed me this image of him being like in a shower and his loved one was on the other side.
okay.
And he was explaining to me that where they are is as simple as just being on the other side of a shower curtain. Like
Close yet so far.
they can so close. Yeah. They can see us, they can hear us, they can feel us. We just cannot see them
In
in
like
the
the way that
like
we're used to,
this the
like
way that we're used to. And
physical,
I
yeah.
always say it's so frustrating
It's tough.
because we have to work so hard to
Yeah.
get on the vibration to be able to connect with them. So to be able to receive those signs and feel their energy close to us, we have to be at a much higher vibration because spirit operates in a much higher vibration. And oftentimes the emotions that we're in during grief, like the control around wanting to receive
Yeah.
signs and
Just not allow
frustration
us to do it.
and anger and even depression, all of that are very low vibration energy.
Right. Right.
And spirit is all in like joy, like
Yeah.
happiness, like they're having a great time. So we have to kind of
Yeah.
like meet them halfway somewhere,
Yes,
like
that's how
somewhere
my
in the
medium
middle.
described it. Yeah, she's like, they're gonna
Yeah.
try and meet you where you're at, but you really have to meet them too. They can only do so much.
Yeah.
Like
So we
there.
have to kind of bring our energy up to make
Yeah.
that link and to really be able to see those signs and tune into their energy close to us.
Yeah.
So this is why I love teaching people how to ask for signs. And then we
Mhm.
talk about releasing control around it because when you see the signs, when you get the validation, it raises your vibration
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it builds your confidence in that this connection is there. And the more you build that confidence and the higher your vibration become, the more it can happen. And it's
Yeah.
just like it's a snowball effect of
Builds.
like it builds upon itself of like, it's there now, you have the confidence, you can tune into it as often as you need to, and you just need to get on their vibration. Like
Yeah.
go enjoy yourself, go
Right.
have fun, do little things every day that bring you joy so that you can be in the vibration to meet them in the middle somewhere.
That's so beautiful. I love the way that you said that because I think that's like the missing piece for people a lot of the time. They're looking for this tangible, like connect. They just so badly want it to happen. And in doing that, I'm so glad you brought up this low versus high vibrational thing because I wrote a blog post about it and I believe in that so deeply. But I think that's what people don't understand is like it's kind of just the law of attraction. Like what you attract will more of that will be brought to you.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this attraction retraction sort of thing. So I understand. And for anybody listening here, like I understand the difficulty of living in that high vibration. Maybe we feel guilt about that. We fear that. We don't want to because if
Yeah.
we allow ourselves to do that, we somehow feel further away from them or like we feel guilty for living our best life when they're no longer here. But like it's actually really the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how hard that is to wrap our head around and how twisted that can feel
That is
sometimes.
a real thing what you're describing.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember
I've
going through that
been
and
there.
I still see like some of Jared's family members being in that vibration where
Yeah.
they are, it's the difference between connecting in through joy instead of connecting in through pain. And
Yes.
that's where so many of us are
Opposite.
at in grief is we are feeling connected through pain.
Yeah.
The
And
longer we stay sad, the longer we cry, the longer we look at old pictures and
yeah.
just sob, the closer the loss feels.
Hmm.
And I'm asking people to flip the script on that.
Yes.
And if you can find ways that you can feel connected and still have that same closeness, but through joy.
Hey, my friend, are you needing some relief from your grief? If so, I have an exciting new offering coming really soon that will help you get exactly that. My 14-day Relief in Your Grief challenge brings you powerful, impactful, bite-sized daily content alongside the perfect meditation. One of the biggest struggles I hear from my members, clients, and people on social media is that they just need some relief from the stress, sadness, and pain that grief and loss can cause. But here's the thing, so many people are lost and unsure about where to start. This can feel like a huge thing to tackle, so we are doing it together, and we're starting with just 14 days. Give me 2 weeks and I will help you begin to take that anxiety, heartache, and anguish and turn it into peace, clarity, and hope as you move forward with your grief. Seriously, what do you have to lose by joining? Challenge your grief and give yourself some relief, my friend. I have no doubt this 14 days will be an inspiring, uplifting, perspective-changing experience for you. My mailing list will be the first to hear about when this challenge is live. Join now through the link in the show description.
It's just going to compound and you're going to feel it even more strongly and you're going to feel a lot better.
Yes.
You're going to be able to get through your day to day because you have these joyful moments to help uplift you and you're feeling more and more connected.
Yeah. And our loved ones, like, I'm not going to jump and say like, and our loved ones want us that for us too. I know that's very cliche for people, but if we are thinking about it, like you said, if they're living in this joy, these high vibrations, like, I don't care where anybody thinks our loved ones go or anything. It could be heaven. It could be wherever anyone thinks. That's not what this episode is about, but it's like, wherever it is, like I feel like and maybe you can actually touch on this even better than I can, but I am definitely of the belief that when we leave our physical bodies, our ego goes, like all of these like tangible physical emotions and sadness, like all these things that we feel as like a physical human being. I don't want to say so blanket statement, like it goes with us, but like all of that is released when we leave here. And all that is, I've had many people say this to me, mediums and just other people that are just like, I know my loved ones are cool, because they're like, all that's left is the joy and the love. And there just no time for sadness or like, or wallowing or whatever. Like they're in a good, happy, joyful place. And we can also have the permission to do that. And I love how you're just flipping this around for people, because I don't think that occurs to most people, that we can and actually more effectively connect and communicate with our loved ones through joy, even though, and it's not that we can't cry. It's not that we can't feel the pain and all of that. And I know that's not what you're saying. Like, it's not that those things aren't going to come up. Like, things are going to trigger us. That's kind of life with grief in a way. But I think, like you said, there's little things we can do every single day. Journaling is like huge for me too. That's really helped me navigate my healing journey. There are things we can do that it is going to be gradual. There is going to be some patience involved, probably more so than we wish, but there is so much potential for that. And it's just like, I always kind of compare it to like working out. Like, sometimes you just do not want to get up and work out. But then like once you get started, you're a few minutes in, you're like, oh, okay, this actually feels kind of good. Endorphins are going. And then you end up maybe doing like a 20 to 30 minute workout. And you're like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. Like that wasn't as bad, because we're feeding into those positive high vibrations instead of like living in the, that lower brain, lower frequency thinking.
Absolutely. And we're not asking people to bypass your harder emotions. Like,
for sure,
we do need to spend time working through that deep stuff, that deep inner work of grief. I feel like grief has this beautiful way, not so beautiful sometimes, of reflecting back to us the things that we need to work on within ourselves, and also within the relationship that we shared with the person we lost, and why certain things went a certain way and whatnot. But truly, like, do that work for sure in moments, but then also allow yourself to live in moments. I had an episode recently on grief awakening, and I don't remember which one it was. I'll have to send you the link to it, but where I channeled a message from spirit, and I titled it a joy letter. And it was this beautiful message directly from spirit. And it just came through that week of something that people needed to hear right now. The people who are struggling to allow themselves to feel any joy, like we were talking about earlier. Kind of helping them to break free from that. And the reason why spirit wants us to feel better. Because when we take the time to really raise our vibration and let ourselves feel a little bit of joy from day to day, they feel it too.
Yeah.
So as you were saying before about spirit lets go of those ego emotions, right? They
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
but they have recognition that we're still going through it.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
they're not feeling it for us, but they have
Yeah.
recognition that we are. And so
Yes.
they want us to change that vibration. Let yourself have a good time. Let yourself, if the only joy you can get from your entire day is going out and getting yourself a fancy iced coffee somewhere and you get, excitement for 5 minutes from that,
Yeah.
like do that. And when you're in that vibration, you're sipping your awesome Starbucks drink or whatever, like that's the perfect time right then to sit and talk to your loved one and ask them for a sign.
Mm-hmm.
You're in that vibration for a moment. And it's
Yeah.
okay if you can only get there for a moment. And eventually those small moments will add up to even bigger moments of joy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. This is the whole point. This is like just exactly what I preach. Like it's a joyful, fulfilling, meaningful life with our losses and with our grief and everything. They can coexist. And this is like, I love this conversation so much because I feel like it's illuminating for people like how this can be done. Because I feel like that is very
Yeah.
elusive for people sometimes. And they've rightfully so, can feel very discouraged, can feel like it's taking a long time, like don't kind of understand that it is a process and it is a slow one sometimes and it is a literal moment by moment, day by day kind of thing. But and yeah, we do have to take a little bit of action on it. Like there's a part of us that kind of just wants to sit there and see, maybe see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's why people sometimes, and I want to get into the work that you do here in a moment as well, but like I feel like that's why some people um, don't seek the help that they need. They don't maybe get a grief coach or even a therapist or whatever, whatever kind of help that they need, because they're just going to wait and see. They're going to wait to see better. They're just biding time. And it's like, if any of us know anything, it's that life is very short. Life can be
Mm-hmm.
taken at a moment's notice. And why spend it, living in that lower vibrational energy?
Yeah.
Um, and that being said, so with the energy work that you do, I just want to touch on that in a moment. Whatever you want to touch on as far as like Reiki goes, that is something I've actually wanted to explore, both doing as a client, but also like possibly down the line. But I'm curious how that shows up for you as far as like the healing that you can help people tap into by
Yeah.
doing energy healing work.
Yeah. I think my story of how I found Reiki is probably the perfect example to explain this. Um, so just after Jared's first year anniversary of his passing, um, yes, I was feeling connected. I was feeling close to him, his energy, all of that was beautiful, but I was still in my grief,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
that the connection doesn't take it away completely, right? As you were saying.
Totally.
Um, and I started feeling anxiety, and anxiety is a very common symptom when you're moving through the grieving process. And I had never had anxiety before in my life.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been stressed from time to time, but I was never an anxious person. And it came on so sudden, so full force. I was so uncomfortable in my body. I was angry at people. I was like snippy with people that I love for no reason.
Mhm.
A friend of mine recommended Reiki to me and I had never heard of it. I was like, what the heck is that?
Mhm.
But I needed relief so badly that I was willing to try just about anything.
Anything. Yeah.
And so I sat with a Reiki practitioner for the first time. And within one session, I felt completely different. I felt like anxiety had completely been ridden from my body.
Wow.
And from then on, I never experienced anxiety like that ever again in my life.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's massive.
So once I did this with her I went back a couple of times
Yeah.
and I felt so connected to this modality because I saw the change it made
Mhm.
in myself. And I was like, I need to learn this and teach this to other people.
Yeah.
I want to help other people moving through grief with this modality. And so that's where that started. And the beautiful thing about Reiki is it's so gentle that you
Yeah.
don't even really know that it's doing anything
Like
until
happening.
until it's done. It's so strange. So Reiki, for those who are not familiar, is an energy work modality. It is primarily from the Japanese culture, and it was taken over to the United States around the 1800s. And so this is like ancient
Yeah.
modality,
Yeah.
and is a form of hands-on healing. And so a practitioner, someone who's trained to perform Reiki, um, sits with someone very similar as you would for like a massage. You lie down, and what you're doing, the practitioner is doing, is tuning into the energy centers of your body. So your chakras. A
Mhm.
lot of people have heard that word before. It's starting to like become more familiar, but we have
Yeah.
7 energy centers in our body. And what happens over time as we move through life, we go through traumas such as grief and loss.
Mhm.
Those energy centers almost get like, if you can imagine, a clog in a pipe. Like if you
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
water flowing through pipes and one of the pipes got clogged, water or energy is not flowing as clearly and cleanly as it could be. And
Yeah.
so the Reiki comes in and just helps kind of rebalance and reset everything.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I use that modality with clients often. Most of them are grieving. Some of them are just going through regular anxiety. Some of them are just um, feeling a little off. Like it's beautiful for all sorts of different things.
Mhm.
Insomnia, depression. Um, there's like a list, 1,000, symptoms long that you can look
Yeah.
up if you're interested. But it essentially just helps you like give you a big refresh on your energy. And so it's a beautiful way for people who are grieving
Yeah.
to almost like lighten the load and the
Mhm.
heaviness of grief, even if it's just for a moment, because life happens again, right?
Yeah.
Life will happen again, and something might get clogged or stuck again, and you might need to go back. But
Yeah.
um, it's just a beautiful way to rebalance and reset and like bring some peace back into your body.
Mhm. Yeah. I think people underestimate, I certainly did, how much energy really affects it on a day-to-day. But I'm actually really glad you brought up like even outside of grief, because there are just natural stressors that can come up, or just some people that just struggle with anxiety or depression or whatever, just it's
Yeah.
just a part of their journey. And so yeah, I love how you said that. And I mean, again, it's like we've been talking about, even just for a moment, right? It just gives you some relief, however temporary it is. But I feel like Reiki or some of the other energy healing that you do, when you feel, it's kind of like the signs and symbols. When you see it or experience it once, you're like you're kind of not the same person in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if just like a little bit, you're just like, what, I can't unsee that. I can't
Yeah.
unfeel. And then you're just like,
I always joke
wait a
that like
second.
people who experience Reiki for the first time, after you're done, you have like this
They're like reborn a little.
post Reiki like glow about you.
Yes.
You're like, and they're
Yeah.
always like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like they get up and they know that they feel different, but they don't
You
understand,
can't like
maybe
pinpoint how.
understand why,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they just know that they feel very different.
Yeah.
And I just love watching people when they get up from the table, or even the next day they'll send me an email, be like, oh my gosh, like I slept so hard last night,
Yeah.
like I had the best night of sleep ever. I just love getting that feedback that what we're doing together brought them some kind of relief, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I provide Reiki. That was kind of the thing that started my business, and then eventually opened up the grief coaching container, and then mediumship. So it's like all of this stuff combined
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean,
to
you're
really support people who are grieving and non-grief. I work with plenty of people who are not grieving something, in this moment, but can still benefit from all of these things.
yeah, definitely. So amazing. I mean, yeah, and this is just a testament to how all-consuming grief can be, just the many, many ways that can affect us,
Yeah.
that it can affect us. But yeah, I mean, shifting our energy and shifting our mindset and allowing that transformation to happen and to evolve, I think is just it's one of the most difficult things to wrap our head around and to allow to happen naturally. I think for group, I have to remind myself, because I'm in a much better, healthier place in my life and in my grief than I've probably ever been. But there are times where I have to like take myself back a little bit and be like, you were not always this way. Like there was no light at the end of the tunnel at one, but there was no tunnel to be seen. Right. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
for anybody here listening, just to kind of start wrapping this up, like for anyone here, there's kind of two questions I want to ask you. The first is just as far as like the intuition goes, like what guidance or tip can someone listening here take away about how to better trust their intuition or tap into that? And like, how can that just play a role in just their grieving journey and just their day-to-day life if they're kind of struggling to navigate that?
Yeah. I love that you asked this question because honestly, it's been something that's been coming up so often with my current grief coaching clients. And it's like a two-part thing, but the answer is one. So like you're asking, how can the people who can't see the tunnel, how can
Yeah.
we start to see a little bit of light?
Mm-hmm.
Find where is the tunnel? I don't even see it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that can start by just so simply listening to your intuition. And with the way your intuition speaks to you is in everyday little moments when you need to make a choice on something,
Yeah.
to listening to that first gut instinct that comes to you. And I love to give these silly examples because it makes so much sense. So if you wake up in the morning and you go to your closet and you're looking through your clothes and trying to figure out what you want to wear.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe like a beautiful, colorful dress pops out at you and you're being pulled to it. But then
Yeah.
you say, oh, nope, that's too dressy for today, or I might stain it, or like you'll almost like go against your intuition and choose something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
The listening to your intuition is always going for that first thing that you're pulled to.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes. So even if you were trying to decide what you want for dinner and your friend's like, do you want Mexican or do you want Italian? And your body is telling you, I want Mexican, but you say, I don't know, what would you like?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
as often as you can, choose to go with that first instinct, what your body is telling you that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're grieving, we can do something very similar from day to day. If you're feeling like, I don't even know where to start, how am I supposed to feel joy? I can't even like get up out of bed. Okay, do the first thing that your body is telling you that would feel good.
Yeah.
So would it feel good to get up and just go take a hot shower? Do
Mhm.
that. Like keep like moment to moment. You don't have to look ahead to the end of the day. You don't have to look ahead to the end of the week.
Yep.
Go from moment to moment. Okay, what feels good right now? Do
Sparks
that.
joy. Yeah.
Okay, what's the next thing? Do that. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even have to be pure joy that you're feeling. Like you don't have to get
Mm-hmm.
excited about something, but
Yeah.
just listening to your body and telling you and listening to what it's telling you it needs
Yeah.
is a great way to start to get in that vibration of, okay, how can I make myself feel good?
Yeah.
And when we're grieving, we need that. We need
Yeah.
to feel comfortable. We need to feel good. We need to feel safe. And listening to your intuition will always guide you there.
I love that. That's very reflective of the journey I sort of had with it in order to tap into my intuition more. And you're right. It's like, and I know joy and all of that can feel so far away. So literally, even if I would literally ask myself this question, does this feel good or does this feel bad?
Yeah.
Does this feel something like that lightens me up a little bit, or is that like, or does it not? And it's just very simple questions, not to overthink it, because the last thing we need to do is have more on our plate or more, you know what I mean? And more, and actually it's funny when you were talking about like the deciding what to wear thing, that's another thing that I think grievers often struggle with. It's just like we have so many things going on. We might have so many choices. It's like one of those things where like if people trying to support are just like, let me know what you need. And you're just like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what I need. And there's like there could be so many things that I need. So little decisions just between like one or two things, like make it so easy because you have been through something profoundly difficult. The last thing we need is to pile on. And unfortunately, like other people might pile on us, right? We might still have to work. We might have a family, we have kids, whatever, that we still have to like be there for and show up for and navigate. But we do have a semblance of control. I feel that like, we can control more or less what's going on in our head and how much we overwhelm ourselves or not on top of everything else. And so just whittling it down and just making life as easy to navigate in as many ways as we can. And our intuition wants to help us out. I feel it, like, you know, it's there for a reason. It is literally something that helps us keep alive and to survive. And grief in so many ways is like survival, right? And so really when you like strip it all down and away, grieving or not, like that is the essence of our soul at the end of the day. And we can tap into that. And I told this story in a recent episode of like how my daughter was born and that journey. And had I not listened to my intuition, and if I had listened to my husband saying like, oh no, she's probably fine, you know, when she wasn't moving very much, she literally would not be here right now. And so, and it's not that all of our decisions with our intuition in our life could be that severe. But it just goes to show the gravity and like just the power that our intuition can have and bring to us, but also the empowerment that it can also bring. And like I feel like this is just the theme of the episode today, is like the more we let that in, the more we let this magic and all of these beautiful things work for us, and we work kind of with conjunction with it, it can literally change your life, and it will change your view on your grief and how you cope with your loss day to day.
Absolutely. It's so beautifully said. So beautifully said.
It's a powerful shift but it's tough. We got to open up to it. We have to allow it to happen and all the things. But okay, so just to close this out, and because you've already given so many amazing pieces of like tools and guidance and everything, but even whether it's with our energy or intuition or however you want to answer this question, what is just maybe one or two very high level tips or pieces of guidance that you can give someone here listening today who is just really struggling, like something maybe you learned in your grieving journey, like just to leave someone with like, okay, here's what I can do to cope with my grief a little bit better today?
Yeah.
Or just be gentler with ourselves, really.
Absolutely. It's so much about being gentle, right?
Yeah.
I think what I learned really early on, and I don't know if a lot of people do this in the beginning of your journey, but is really just, like I said, listening to your own body and doing what feels right for you. You don't need to attend all these family events. You don't need to answer this person's text message or their phone call that because they called to give their condolences or whatever. Like,
right.
you don't need to respond to all the cards you got in the mail or say thank you for all the casseroles. Like, this season is like the perfect time for you to be selfish. And in order for you to really get through, especially the beginning stages of grief, is to continue to only do what feels good and brings you peace.
Yeah.
So if you're not feeling peace right now, well, first of all, your world's just been shaken up.
Right.
So
like,
it's going to be hard to get there. Don't make it any harder on yourself by trying to show up and do all of these things that you don't really want to do.
Yeah.
So I'll say I was a little bit probably selfish in the beginning of my grief journey, but that is how I survived.
Yes. Yeah.
And so be selfish for a little while if you need to. And in the day to day, keep following the little things that feel good. The more often you can follow your intuition, like we were just talking about, in the bigger moments, you'll more easily be able to listen to it because you'll know what it sounds like when it's speaking to you. So just keep tuning into that. And then as far as like connecting with your loved one, I always say like the simplest thing you can do is just start by talking to them or writing to them if you don't want to talk to them. If that feels awkward, like
I know that can feel awkward to people. I love it.
can.
I can talk to my friends.
Whether you choose to talk to them out loud, to sing to them, write to them in a journal, it doesn't matter. They're going to receive the message. So I suggest people to start there. If you want to take it a step further, I do have a free meditation available on my website. It's called Reignite Your Connection Meditation. And that will guide you into a visualization to actually have a visual conversation with your loved one when you're seeing them in a vision. Some people are not ready for that, and that's okay. You know, if looking at pictures is making you cry, you might not want to do that yet. But that is another beautiful way through meditation to start kind of like letting their energy in a little bit more and seeing what that feels like.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the last things I'll say, because something you said reminded me, you know, we all experience not only seeing our loved ones differently, but our intuition can look and sound different depending on the person too. So I think it's everything we talked about today, such a beautiful lesson, and just like certainly not comparing our journey to anyone else's, or how some people might not only just navigate and cope with their grief, but like see or feel their loved ones or whatever. And so that's why, like at the beginning, when I was talking about people that were a little envious that my parents had come to me or whatever, and it's just like, just knowing that our journey and all of this is sacred to us, and there is patience involved, but the more we can just allow that flow, open the chakras, all the things, more of that beauty and that peace is going to come to us. And you've given so much amazing insight and really tools that people can use in order to start tapping into this today. So thank you seriously so much for all of us today. Like, I know we could have been talking about this for another couple hours probably, but this is a good little crash course.
Absolutely. This stuff that we talked about today is just like the thing that I have been wanting to scream from the rooftops since the moment I first connected with Jared. And the joy that we can feel when you can get that connection again, it's like nothing else.
Next level. Yeah,
it's
you
next
can't even
level,
describe it really.
And I want everyone to be able to experience it in some way or another. You know, it doesn't have to be the way that I do it. You'll find your own way. But it's truly, beautiful. I believe that is such a beautiful tool to help us move through this grief and move through the rest of our life until we are reunited with them in a sense. Right.
Yeah. It's so true. And I know, and there's a lot of people that it makes me so sad. I see comments like this all the time where there's like, I'm kind of just biding time until I see my loved ones again. I'm biding time until all I want to do is be with them. And I'm like, but they're here. I just got chills as I said, like they're closer than you think. So amazing. Okay. So where you mentioned that meditation. So where can people find you, your website, social, your podcast? And this is all going to be linked in the show notes, of course, but how can people connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me primarily on Instagram at intuitively_Alyse. I'm pretty active on there almost every day. The podcast is Grief Awakening. We have more conversations just like this one, talking to people just like Tara about their grief experience and how they are connecting in with their loved ones on the other side. And then the website is intuitively.Alyse.com, and you can access all of my coaching containers and mediumship, Reiki, all of that is available on there.
Awesome. All the good things. Thank you so much, Alyse. I appreciate your time and insight and just positive vibes so much.
Thank you so much, Tara.
I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, ways to work with me, to shop my daily journal, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you haven't left a rating or a review, please do so. I would so appreciate it. Or if you feel so inclined to share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. I'll catch you in the next episode.